Good morning, everyone. I'm Karine Coutinho, VP Marketing and Communication at Lemonway, and I'm really glad to have you online today with us for this masterclass. This is the very first one we are organizing in collaboration with our partner and ally, CocoLabs. And the topic of today is about connecting customers to service providers thanks to the marketplace model, with a specific focus on the inherent benefits of such a model to generate more trust on the customer side and better efficiency and revenues on the seller side. So we're lucky to have attendees from all over Europe today. Welcome online. Big thanks to you all for joining us. We have a pretty packed program we would like to share with you. We have 30 minutes to tell you all we can about service marketplaces. At least we'll do our best to keep the schedule. So regarding the program, we will start and we'll kick off with Anthony Noyon, CEO of CocoLabs. CocoLabs is a marketplace solution, a marketplace maker, really, specialized in service marketplaces. And Anthony will take us through the specificities of service marketplaces and advantages of this model for service offering. And then we will continue with Martin-Pierre Gauthier. Martin-Pierre is Chief Commercial and Marketing Officer at Lemonway. We will deep dive with him into payment transactions optimization for service marketplaces and what it entails from a regulatory standpoint. And then we will focus and finish with a concrete use case that CocoLab and Lemonway have in common, which is the service marketplace 360 Travaux. And then, of course, we will finish with a Q&A session, and our experts will be there to answer all your questions. So feel free to interact with us all along the event. On the right-hand side of your screen, you have a control panel, a chat section, and a tab called Questions. So please insert your questions there, and we will pick them up and ask our experts to reply to them all along the way. We'll also have one poll for you to interact and benchmark yourself with the audience, and we will comment the results at a given time. This being said, we have an extensive program, so let's kick off without any further ado. So Anthony, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and hello everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Anthony Noyon. I'm one of the founders at CocoLabs. I've been building marketplaces for a little over 12 years. I've had the opportunity to help the launch of over 100 marketplaces over the time. And one commonality that all of these marketplaces have is that they exclusively sell services online. And I'm very fortunate to have had this field of specialty. And I'll talk to you about the specificities of selling services online. I mean, in principle, most of you know what a marketplace, but what is special about selling services online? Well, first of all, selling services online is hard. If you are a service seller, you'll naturally turn to an e-commerce solution to start selling your services online, and very quickly you'll come to the conclusion that the solutions that are available on the market are really designed to selling products mostly in the context of retail. And you have notions such as shipping, which are inbuilt, and obviously we don't ship people. Services aren't described as large, medium, or small, or through the usual attributes that you'll find in traditional e-commerce. And above all, what happened to dates and location. Dates or location are features and information which are absolutely essential when you're trying to sell your services online. And so if you've ever had the opportunity to install a PrestaShop, a Magento, or a WooCommerce, instantly you're in the world of selling the product, of shipping it, of having your attributes, declining it, large, medium, small, blue, red, white. And so how do we solve this problem? And most of all, let's imagine you did manage to build a service e-commerce. Now what? Well, you're all alone. You've gone through the trouble of adapting the e-commerce solution to the service industry. You're online, but you have different challenges. First of all, if you're a service provider, your offering is typically local and available at certain moments. Additionally, online marketing costs are disproportionately high because you're competing with other e-commerce actors who typically have more track record and that are occupying the same space, but what you're doing again is local. And finally, and this is probably the most important point, service providers don't have marketplaces to help them. So if you're selling, let's say you're the best accordion builder in the Alpes-Maritimes, you can sell that on Amazon, on eBay, in different locations. But if you're a great accountant or plumber or hairdresser, you're not going to find a marketplace that's going to be able to help you. They're still too rare. And so you're really all by yourself. So how do we help these service providers? Well, by multiple approaches. First of all, we give them the features that they need. One of the most important features, obviously, is the agendas, being able to manage when am I available to provide this service. And then additionally to that, we've got the geolocation, which is where am I available to provide this service. Obviously, in times of confinement, we're doing more and more tele services, but even in the case of tele services, geolocation allows us to determine the time zone, which then helps us determine when we can set these appointments between people. And so agendas and geolocation together are kind of the equivalent of our stock keeping, but for services. It's what lets us know, can we sell this service? Can it be rendered? And together, therefore, that information allows us to build an order management solution, which is specifically adapted to the service industry. And therefore, by ricochet, we have our dashboards, again, specifically adapted to the service industry. And we end up with the notion of payments. Obviously, they are secure, but really what's quite particular is that it is commonplace in the service industry that the price of the service change over time. When you buy a product, you don't expect the product that you purchased to change prices. But when you, for example, call on a plumber, describe your issue on the phone in the traditional way of buying the service, it's not uncommon afterwards for the price to evolve because you didn't describe everything that had to be done. And these are features which are native and absolutely habitual in the sale of services online. So this is regarding really the features that we need to provide to service providers. But on top of that, what more do we need to give them? We need to give them customers, obviously, and that is what the marketplace does. You've got features such as search and compare, which are going to be pulling consumers onto the platform because for the first time, they have a wide array of choices from which to pick to purchase their services. We're also going to be building the reputation of service providers, which is going to be essential. If you buy an iPhone 12 on the Fnac, on Amazon, you trust the distributors, but the product itself already has a reputation. Whether you buy it at one or the other, it's going to be the same product. With service providers, this is completely different. They need to have an online reputation and they need to be recognized for the quality of the work that they provide. And this is what the marketplace also builds. And in doing so, it also builds safety. Very often services are received, for example, at your home, and you want to feel safe as a consumer, but also the service provider needs to feel safe and have the safety, of course, of payment at the end of the service provision. We then have the notion of onboarding. This is going to be very specific because we're dealing with lo-fi vendors, which means that these are individuals and companies that have rarely, if ever, sold online. They're not like traditional e-commerce actors who've had access to e-commerce solutions adapted to them for over 10 years. So we can't import them, we can't do a mass import. These are generally people that we're dealing with. And so we have to provide onboarding tools that are specifically adapted to vendors that aren't familiar with selling online. And finally, probably the biggest element of value that a marketplace can bring to vendors is the visibility, of course. And this is the concentrate of providing a choice to consumers and having the capability of projecting the information out through the efforts of the operator of the platform itself. And so in a nutshell, these are the services that we provide, and this is how we help our customers deploy their service marketplaces around the world. And I'll pass over now to Martin Pierre.
Karine, you're on mute, I think.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Martin. Just before giving the mic to you, Martin, I would like to take this opportunity to launch a quick poll. So the poll section and the tab, the poll tab is actually accessible on the right-hand side of your screen. So let me publish it very quickly. Now you should have it. So the question is about whether you are considering the marketplace model to streamline services offering. So you have 4 options. No, but I'm curious about this model. Second option, yes, nothing defined yet, but I am in the ideation process. Third option, yes, this is a strategic project for me in the coming month. yes, I've been launching my service marketplace already. So I let you reply and we'll come back on those results later on and comment them after during the Q&A session. So Martin, you have additional insights to bring on the table, especially regarding the transactional and regulatory aspects. I let you probably quickly introduce Lemonway and then follow up on your slides.
Thank you very much, Karine. Thanks for the intro. I'm very happy to be with you, very happy to be with Anthony and CocoLabs on stage, because what we see is that marketplaces indeed is being segmented more and more, and CocoLabs is a true specialist of the services marketplaces, and so very happy to have this collaboration online. Also very happy to see people from lots of different geographies, which gives me a lot of good energies. I see Lisbon, I see Amsterdam. I also see Sèvres in France. So, thanks a lot for coming and being online. On Lemonway side, I'm not going to spend so much time on Lemonway itself, but really focusing on what is payment for marketplaces selling services. And I think, Anthony, I've said one sentence, which is, it's hard. And indeed, operating a marketplace is a challenge. And you need to organize yourselves to potentially deal with those challenges. The first one, it's dealing with the regulatory constraints and requirements. As a marketplaces, you need to get organized to be able to fight against AML, against terrorism. And this is why you need to have a setup, and I'll get back on that later, that allows you to take money on behalf of your sellers. So the individuals or the businesses proposing content on these marketplaces. You need to also KYC people and to comply with GDPR obligations. So this is a first big pillar, which is about regulatory constraints. Then, of course, you need to get organized to make sure that you accept payments. That sounds like a basic, but you need to think about what is the right payment methods in line with my population. Should I go for cards? Should I go for alternative payment methods? Should I go for bank transfer? And so this is also an open question that we'll be tackling during this the next couple of minutes. And then you need to operate the financial flows within your marketplaces, making sure that the money is hosted on that account, as well as being reconciled with the different orders. So these are the three, if we sum it up, these are the three big pillars on which we need to find answers for marketplaces. Let's tackle the first one, which is how do I cope with the regulatory constraints? And here you have three options. Either you decide to go and to do it by yourself. Some very large companies or some companies for strategic reasons decides to go and get this very specific status, which is payment establishment. Let's call it financial institution. But this is a big work. You need to go and talk to your regulators, engage people, have risk mapping policy, have compliance teams. And so this is quite an investment. Why not? Depends on your, I would say, overall business strategy. Then the second option is go for an exemption. Are you sure that I need to be regulated if I do operate this marketplace? There are some conditions that allows you to be exempted, but they are pretty rare. And then the third one is, which is, I would say, the mainstream way of operating marketplaces, which is to work with payment solutions which having this accreditation from the regulator. This is the case for Lemonway. This is the case for some others, of course. And this is what we believe is the most, I would say, cost-efficient way of addressing the regulation within marketplaces offering services. So these are the three options on how to deal with the regulation. Once you've decided your setup, and let's assume you go for picking up a PSP, so payments provider, then you need to understand what are the services that this PSP is going to offer to you as a marketplaces. The PSP, and Lemonway, of course, being here today, is actually offering three main services. The first one is what we call pay-in, money-in. This is the way we accept payments. We are going to talk about payment means And this is how do we collect money on the platform. Then we talk about accounts being segregated, KYC procedures, which is how do we identify, how do we onboard seller, sometimes also buyer, depending on your activities, and how do we reconcile the flows. And then very important as well is what kind of services are we offering to the marketplaces to make sure that they can cash out very fast to the seller. This is especially true in services marketplaces because, as Anthony have said, we are dealing usually on almost individuals or small businesses offering content on those marketplaces. Those individuals, they don't have the luxury to wait 30, 60, 90 days to get paid, and they are looking for a very quick cash out. So very important to understand actually what you can expect from a PSP when you contract with them to operate your services marketplace. Of course, we are touching a lot of concepts in a very short time frame, so I'm happy to take up questions at the end of the sessions or potentially offline. So here we talk about the pillar of acquisition. What kind of payments should I accept? And again, here it's a very broad question and it depends very much on your businesses. But you have, I would say, three big criteria or big categories of payments acceptance. You have, of course, cards. So cards, this is Visa, Mastercard, and CB for French cards. Then you have a second bucket, which is bank transfers, which is in some occasions, and also looking at the overall, I would say, trends getting much more popular. It's do I accept direct bank transfer? And then you have a third category, which is what we call today alternative payment means, or here on the slides, innovative payment methods, which is do I need Apple Pay? Do I need Google Pay? And do I need those alternative payment methods? Again, this depends on what you're serving, what you are proposing, and where do you stand. If you have activities in Germany, very important to be offering Zofort. If you have activities in Netherlands, very important that you're offering Ideal. If you are operating in Belgium, Bank Contact, etc. So there is still a lot of specificities depending on your geos, depending on your contents, which helps you to select the right payment means. There is one thing that Anthony has said, which is that the amount, when you buy an iPhone, you know that it's, I don't know, 799 plus shipping goes to 822. When you buy services, that may differ. And so you need to have a PSPs who is able to have, together with the marketplace operator, these capacities to have a final pricing management. So quickly, this is about, I would say, payment means, very important for you to assess if your PSP is offering the right ones. Then something that tends to be underestimated, but which is heavy, let's be clear, it's how do I onboard sellers? And this, you need to KYC them. When I say KYC, stands for know your customer. You could also here know your business, KYB, more or less that stands for the same. It depends who do you onboard. But it means that you need to identify each people that are going to sell on the platform. Here again, sometimes, depending on what you are selling, you may have exemptions or you may wait a bit before identifying, but in 95% of the cases, you need to identify your seller as soon as they start offering content on the platform. So here, I'm not going to go into details because this starts to be a bit admin, but this is the list of documents that you need to organize within your, I would say, working flow together with a CocoLabs or together with your own, I would say, team to make sure that you collect it properly. You need to make a split between are you identifying auto-entrepreneur for the French-speaking, individual persons or businesses because the expectations are different, as well as from a geographical standpoint. So this is quite a complex environment, but which is a necessity, and this is for the good, because this is to make sure that you're building trust on your platform, making sure that your sellers are professional and in line with regulation. This is what Anthony has said. when you buy iPhone on Amazon, it's almost a no-brainer. But when you start buying services on the marketplaces, which is new or 3 or 4 years ago being funded, you need to make sure that trust is very high on your platform and a strong KYC process goes in line with it. So this is about KYC, what we call onboarding seller on the marketplace. Last slide, summarizing what more or less you could really look for when engaging with a PSP. And I'm just going to connect slides before and this one with the very first bullet points, because I've touched the point a bit before, but this is how do you cash out? Again, having a very quick cash out, making sure that your money can be called by the seller very quickly is a strong added value for your marketplace's liquidity. How do you sell the value proposition to your seller? Having a quick cash out is an important element. So one of the functionalities that you need to look at is how do you cash out? Are you able to do payment by subscription? Which kind of payment methods are you accepting you as a PSP? How do you handle your KYC? How do you handle something we did not touch during the deck, the commission? Because me as a marketplace, I may take X percentage on this seller, I may take Y percentage on this seller. And so how do you on the PSP side manage to have a differentiated commission schemes depending on the seller on my platform? Very important. Then dashboard. Whether it's being built up by the marketplace operator, such as CocoLabs, or whether it's being offered by the PSPs, it's very important to get reporting, to get data. What's the quality of the dashboard that your PSP is offering? Is it user-friendly? Is it real-time? How easy is it to go through, etc., etc.? But make sure that you challenge the dashboard as well, because this is an important element. And then, because this is a reality, how qualitative is the support teams on your PSP side? Because we talk about KYC, we talk about seller, we talk about transactions, so you can be sure that at some occasions you have questions popping up. Why am I not registered yet as a seller? Why is this ID not being eligible? Where is these transactions, especially when we talk about bank transfer at the moment? So plenty of questions can be raised on the marketplaces. And so make sure that your PSPs is also well equipped by a support teams which potentially talk different languages and are experts in what they operate. So these are, in a nutshell, what we consider are as the 6-8 key elements that you should be assessing if tomorrow you launch an RFP or you have a gré-à-gré discussion with PSPs. I see that there are some questions, but I will tackle them potentially with Anthony later.
Or probably you can tackle them directly via the chat, and we can kick off the presentation of the 360 Travaux case with Anthony.
Yes, thank you for handing over. So I'll be talking now about 360 Travaux. This was a really interesting project, first of all, because it's a project which was initiated by the CAPEB, which is the Confédération de l'Artisanat et des Petites Entreprises du Bâtiment. And what's really interesting is that they identified very early on that there was a change occurring in the distribution of services and the sale of services online. So for those of you that don't know it, the CAPEB represents artisans in France. It's one of the largest confederations. And rather than just be a spectator to change, they decided to become an actor in this change by launching their own platform, which would connect customers with home renovation service providers, therefore artisans. And so already the willingness of the customer and the anticipation that they showed was something which was quite unique and allowed us to advance very rapidly. This was a project that was built alongside Smile as well, who are acting also as integrator of our technology, Cocorico. And it's effectively a platform that allows customers to express their requirements on a highly complex service, which is also a very expensive service at times, and to connect both the buyer and the expression of his requirement with the correct service provider. And so this was a fairly challenging platform in the sense that on the one hand, we've got a complex expression of requirements. On the other hand, we've got a community of service providers, which very few of them have already sold online, and we have to successfully connect both of these communities. And so this was cut down basically into three main challenges. On the one hand, we had to delimit the requests, so there was difficulty for the customers to precisely describe their requirements. You can't just randomly select a provider and hope that we'll understand each other. So we have a tool called a decision tree, which the operator can configure and which effectively allows you to select a series of questions which will guide the customer in describing and defining the service that he's looking for. So let's take the example of roofing services. I need to have the roof on my house replaced. We're going to be able to allow the customer to say, well, I need roofing services. This is the size of my roof. This is the type of service I require, and so forth. And in doing so, we're simplifying the process for the consumer to express his requirement. But at the same time, and through the same tool, we're actually managing already the fact that we're matching the consumer with the appropriate provider. Sorry. And so this isn't just describing the services, of course, also concerns the fact that is the provider available, is he already on other missions, and is the distance appropriate, depending on the size of the mission, maybe we'll be willing to go a bit farther or not. And so there's phase one, the delimitation. Phase two, there's the adaptation, in particular with regards to payments. Once again, we're sometimes in large projects. These can be over 10,000 euros large, and we can discover new requirements as we're advancing. And so we have to both manage the fact that payment terms can change in regards to the amounts that are payable, but also in regards to when those amounts are payable. I was giving the example of roofing services. If the weather's bad, we can't do it. We push back the work of a week, and therefore we're also impacting when payments are being made. And finally, the challenge which I find the most interesting is managing what we call lo-fi vendors. Vendors that aren't familiar with selling online, we have to manage a KYC, KYB process, which is well adapted to them, and this is successfully done in partnership with the payment solution, but also give them the ability to properly describe their services in a general sense, but also more specifically in order to get managed precisely with the right customer at the right time. And so this is the lowdown of the services and the challenges that were encountered for the development of this platform. I'll hand over now.
Yes, thanks a lot, Anthony. I'm going to move from the PSP eyes in regards to 360 Travaux, 360 Travaux. I think we are touching the same topics, but with a different, I would say, another approach, but scope of responsibilities. First one, and this is the point number one and point number three on that slide, which is how do we efficiently offer bank transfer payment? Sounds like a basic statement, but when you start operating bank transfer into a multi-basket environment, this is a challenge, and this is something which you need to see how is your PSPs offering the services, especially in line with, as Anthony have said, a final amount that can be different from the first devis, from the first quote that has been made on the platform. And so here, that was indeed a key, I would say, requirements from 360 Travaux. And one of the reasons I believe they are satisfied with the way they are operating their payment on the platform. The second element, it's especially in those, I will use Anthony's name, which is low fee, but which is how do you make sure that you have a high liquidity on your marketplaces? How do you ensure that you have a lot of seller? Because the quality of your marketplaces often depends on the quality of your offering. If you have a very high offering, then the demand is going to grow step by step. So very important to have loyal and high quality in your offering side. And to be able to have a high offering, high qualitative offering on the offering side, the onboarding process is critical. especially when you talk, that's again on low fee or individuals / small businesses that are not yet familiar with digital online processes. And that has been a challenge. I'm going to share with you a couple of KPIs the next slides, but 360 Travaux has an obligation to have a very rich and very broad seller offering, and so has an obligation to be able to onboard them very easily and very smoothly. So from a payment standpoint, we have identified those 3 elements as clear added value elements in what we bring to our customer. Price negotiation tools, so ability to change scope and price after the initial quote. Being able to onboard every day, every week, every month new seller, and being able to deal with bank transfer within the marketplaces. Moving to the next slides, which also could have been almost an intro slides on who is 360 Travaux today. As a lot of actors, you can see the founding date, which is not yesterday, but almost. This is still a very recent platform, which grows very quickly. So founded in 2019. We already seen on the platform almost 4,000 requests for project since the beginning of COVID period. So more or less, let's say 12 months is rolling, even if it's a bit shorter. So this is just to show you how the velocity of the number of requests we can see on the platform. And this is what I've just said before, the number of service seller. This is the prerequisite for having the demand, making sure that you have a lot of offering. 6,300 service seller. This is almost as the number of the KYC that we were talking about a little bit earlier during the presentation that we had to conduct for such a platform. So 360 Travaux is growing fast, is indeed exactly in line with what we considered as a service marketplaces, with all of the, I would say, pre-definition we've done during the past 30 minutes. So this is a quick feedback on these customer experiences operating with CocoLabs and Lemonway.
Thank you both for these great insights. If you agree, we are now moving on to a short Q&A session, but just before we are addressing the questions that came in the chat section, let's comment the results of the poll. So as we can see in the poll section, 75% of the respondents said that there is a strategic project for them in the coming months. Now a little less because we have some more respondents coming in and joining the poll. But Anthony, since you are interacting with the corporates and companies that are thinking about launching their service marketplace, are you more often seeing pure players launching their marketplace and business from scratch? Or do you also see some big corporates thinking about this model to transform their business and digitize their service offering? What is the proportion more or less that you see?
I think it's interesting to comment the evolution over time. I launched my first service marketplace in 2008. It was an extremely rare event. And over time, these projects started becoming more and more commonplace. But until I'd say around 2016, 2017, in the space of services, these were mostly pure players and therefore mostly startups. We've seen an incredible acceleration this year with regards to traditional players that have woken up to the new reality and to the changes that are occurring. And again, it's why I thought that the 360 Travaux project was really notable, because for once we had a mature actor that was anticipating the changes and wasn't just living it and dealing with it a little too late. And so today, by far the large majority of service marketplaces that we're deploying are being deployed by brick and mortar businesses that already have quite a bit of maturity.
Thank you.
This has very rapidly evolved over time.
Interesting. Martin, regarding questions on KYC, and there's another one related to onboarding sellers by Camille and another one from Ludovic. Would you like to reply to those questions?
Yeah, sure. So what is important to understand is what is the regulation expecting. Today we have the Payment Service Directive number 2, which is actually allowing PSPs, payment service provider, to operate in Europe, meaning that we have an obligation to serve people having HQ Europe. So service marketplaces needs to be HQ Europe. Then what is the offering within this marketplace? Who are the seller coming from and who are the buyer coming from? As long as the platform is HQ Europe, we have the chance, we can KYC onboard seller and buyer who are coming outside of EU. Then you need to, of course, understand the scope of the span of action and the scope of the service marketplaces, whether it's a global one or not, and how do they potentially connect services outside of Europe. But the answer is yes, we can KYC people outside of Europe with, of course, specificities. You don't KYC a US citizen the same way as you KYC, of course, a UK citizen. Documents are different, and you need to make sure that when building up your marketplaces and also the customer journey, whatever it's the customer, the buyer, or the customer, the seller, making sure that you have an adapted way, an adapted journey in terms of document collection. The question from Camille, does it mean that Lemonway do the onboarding seller? So here it's a thin split. We today, Lemonway, and I'm not talking for my competitor, but this is more or less as we are all positioned, I believe. We are offering a service for the marketplace. And then it's the marketplace who are talking to seller and buyer. Meaning that the overall onboarding experiences is being designed by the marketplaces and is enhanced with solutions like CocoLabs, and they are the one interacting with the seller. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, once the seller has pushed KYC documents on these marketplaces, indeed, this is Lemonway who is receiving the documents and screening, assessing, and approving them, allowing them, the marketplace, to accept and start trading with the seller or the buyer. So it's a yes and a no. Yes, we do have an actions on document collection, document assessment, and approval, but this is the marketplace with in daily interactions with the seller. Supporting,
Thank you.
I'm just, Karine, just jumping, maybe taking additional 2 minutes on
sure.
on support internal, external, because I was expecting it also in the way I've positioned the arguments on the support team. That's, I think, a good question and a good reasoning to have. Of course, as a marketplace, so putting myself into your shoes, hard to say, because it's really depending on what you're offering. But putting my shoes into my shoes, which is PSP shoes, and whether we should have internal or external support. When you look at the complexity of the offering, which is both transactional and KYC/KYB, which is very dependent or depending on also tools that we have in-house, I would highly recommend that you challenge PSPs who have only external provider. Because this means that there are increasing complexity in internal processes to make sure that they can bring reactive and precise answers into both transactional/KYC, KYB environments. And so I would recommend a potential split depending on action and processes, but to have at least a solid internal support team within your PSP partner.
Thank you. Just before closing the session, Anthony, probably you want to take the question from Hung about what would be a recommended revenue model for service marketplaces.
Yes, I put a little answer in written. As I was saying, there's no one answer fits all to this question. It's going to be project specific. You have to take into account, and there's different dynamics between B2C marketplaces and B2B marketplaces, the dynamic of strength between offer and demand on the market. Most often we deploy platforms that are on a commission-based revenue model, where commissions can be grabbed on the buyer side and on the seller side. And very often it's on both sides. These commissions can be percentages and or fixed fees. We're seeing more and more subscription-based business models in the marketplace space, more often in B2B marketplaces. And we have other very innovative models. And the business model and the revenue streams are obviously part, I would even go as far as saying they are part of the user experience, and everything should be built together. But I don't have a standard fits all answer for that question.
Thank you, Anthony. We just pushed a document on the platform if you want to learn more about PSD2 and all the regulation related to marketplaces. So a big thank you all for your active participation, and a big thank to our speakers, Anthony and Martin, for sharing their expertise today. The replay of this session will be available right after the closing of this webinar. You will receive an email notification, including the link to watch the session again. And of course, if you wish to receive the slides, we are able to send them to you after the session. You just need to reply to the notification, and you will receive the set of slides directly in your mailbox. Once again, many thanks for your participation. Wishing you all the best and lots of good vibes for those of you who are in lockdown. And see you soon online for a next event. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.